Alright, it's Brent Porcio, TopVelocity.net. We're going to do a pitch analysis here at Glenn. I'm going to pair him up with Jason Mott. Take Glenn here into his leg lift. Take Jason here into his leg lift. You gotta be careful with swinging your leg back like that. I've done it in my career. It works only if you're able to still stay on your drive leg, load, and fire or triple extend and build power and hip rotation. Just a lot of low velocity guys who do this, they don't have. It tends to, the lift leg gets out early, takes away from the drive leg, being able to implement its power into the delivery. So you just got to be careful. Wherever there's an action, there's an opposite reaction. Even in my career, when I would kick my leg back, I would lift up first and then kick the foot back, but also focusing on the drive leg. It's hard to be really aggressive with your front leg and still be aggressive with your drive leg. It's just tough, so just be careful with it. You can see here with Jason, he doesn't have any swing at all. He's just lifting straight up, and then he's just riding his hips down. He just shifts the momentum early, getting his power through that momentum shift and trying to pick up as much speed through his entire body, specifically everything above his hips, as he stays closed and starts to build speed towards the target. So just a little bit, just notice the difference here. So let's take you into your load. So after your lift leg does get out early. So you can see when your front knee breaks your front hip, this technically should be where you should be in your load position. This should be linear. It has some flexion, which isn't bad, but it should be linear. Watch Jason here. So when his lift leg gets to the same position, he's in more of a linear position on the drive leg at this point. So he's just covered more distance off the mount, and that's, when you were throwing your weight back, it was holding your weight back, stalling you back. He was not throwing his weight back. He was starting early, starting forward, and building momentum, leading with the hips. So we can see off the front of his hip to his back foot. Look at the difference in the distances here. So definitely has covered more distance. Also, we can see he's really starting to accelerate and take off at this point. We can watch Glenn here. You're just kind of creeping out, reaching out at this point. So not a lot of acceleration in the body. Harder throwers, specifically through the hips, they start off at a base speed and they really start to accelerate before their front foot lands. So the body doesn't slow down, the lift leg doesn't have to reach out. It's a good acceleration of body speed, power production through the stride. So this is Jason in his load. He's just about to land, foot still closed. He's linear, has flexion, and if we take you to that same point, you're linear here. You just don't have as much flexion on your drive legs. You got a little bit more weight out front. He's a little bit farther from the ground. You're a little bit closer to putting down. I know you're working off flat ground, so it makes it a little bit harder here to stay loaded on the drive leg and then to triple extend before front foot strike, which is probably what we're going to see here. This is the point where you need to build your power. So like with Jason, let's watch him first. He'll go into knee extension, which we can see there. And just look at how much distance he starts to cover when he starts to extend. So it looks like he's going to land right here. He goes another foot just from that knee going into an explosive extension. So that's really that linear speed starting to really accelerate at that point, as we can see through these frames before he even puts down. And then he rolls to the inside part of the foot and then kicks the ankle through and stabilizes the front leg. And then the next frame, the hips open. So that's a really explosive drive leg movement, and he had to be in that linear position for him to be able to use that power into hip rotation. because if he was vertical, if his force vector ankle to knee was up at this point, he would have hopped. So there's no hopping here. We can see him cruising and accelerating right off the mound, off the ground. And he really implements an explosive drive leg or triple extension in the front foot strike. We can see this point, the knees extended, ankles extended, and hip flexor is extended as those hips open, and we can see that right pocket. And we know it was explosive, we know it was fast, because it pulled away from the shoulder, so we get that optimal hip-shoulder separation that all high-velocity pitchers do really well. Let's see what Glenn's able to do. So you can see he opens the foot in the next frame, a little knee extension, but ultimately you're putting down and being drug out. So you're seeing your landing as it's popping out. So if we watch the momentum of the lift leg, see how it's picking up more speed than the body, and then it puts down. So that really tells me, because I don't see it slowing down and this driving the movement, it tells me that when you're landing, your back leg is being drugged. So the lift leg flying out, excuse me, the lift leg flying out early and fast means the drive leg is being pulled or drugged by that lift leg. So you're landing, and this last movement as it opened up is really being drug out. Maybe a little bit of a drive, but not enough to take over, because you're landing with your hips still back or just slightly open. So I mean, your shoulders are still in position, but the problem is your hips aren't through. And you can see the difference with Jason here. When he lands, his hips are open and his shoulders are still back like yours are. So you can see his right pocket, your right pocket's over here. So not until your hips get into that same position, which should be probably right there, but you're already throwing the ball. So you're landing, stabilizing, and then the hips come through, but your shoulder didn't separate. And it really has to happen through an explosive drive like Jason's doing here. See that explosive leg drive? Really accelerating the momentum at the end and popping the hips open before the shoulders. So here's, we can watch into, as you land, here's your back hip, back shoulder, still closed, starting to open, but so is shoulder, comes around, so does shoulder. So hips to shoulders in sync into front foot strike. We can see Jason, hips to shoulders separate into front foot strike. Okay, it's just really, that is, hip to shoulder separation is most effectively created through powering the drive leg into triple extension before front foot strike and making sure it's fast enough and explosive enough to where the hips open so quickly that the shoulders don't have time, or they pull away or delay from that opening of the hips. And we know if we can hit here with the hips open, shoulders closed, we put ourselves into a high velocity category, and we pretty much stay there through the rest of the delivery, because it now allows that power to move up the kinetic chain through torque. So the shoulders rotate and accelerate past the hip rotation speeds, because that torsion acts as a force multiplier for the shoulder rotation, and then the arm pulls back in reaction to that shoulder rotation into optimal external rotation. You can see here, when you don't have that, when they move in sync, you don't get that kind of external rotation with forward trunk tilt. You can see you're vertical and not 180, so you're still in a low velocity category. And as long as you stay stable, your arm moves into early internal rotation, and he goes into front leg extension, which is another key component of a high velocity pitcher. You can see you go into a late internal rotation because you're still vertical, almost vertical on your front leg, And I mean, and you know, you're never going to get into a high velocity category. I call it a high velocity category because you know, if you look at the comparison, specifically look at ASMI's comparison of high velocity, low velocity pitchers. So those high velocity pitchers do certain things. So you can see at each component, there's a certain position and set of mechanics that you should be in that puts you in a high velocity category, and that's just representing the speeds and the power in your body, and you can see that you don't have that. So that's what we do with the 3X Pitch Velocity program. We're training you to be a power athlete first, and then we train you to be a power pitcher. So we have to develop the power in you as an athlete so you can, you know, pick up your speeds earlier, load more on your drive leg, power your drive leg through and from a linear position to create optimal hip rotation speeds at front foot strike, which leads to optimal hip to shoulder separation. And then you can stay strong and stable in the front leg to launch that, to convert that up into high velocity. So you have to do both. You have to train yourself through a strength conditioning program that is built to enhance power production for the pitcher, and then you want to develop the motor coordination in the throwing program to move through these components, through these series of mechanical components. And we have a set of proprietary drills that do that for you in that 16 weeks. So I appreciate you sending your video. I hope this helps you see where you can implement a lot more velocity, specifically in your hip to shoulder separation, coming from a more powerful stride. And I mean, you're a perfect candidate because you don't get much hip to shoulder separation at all. So you're looking at 5 to 10 mile an hour increase if you could ultimately implement the mechanics the way Jason Mott has done here. Of course, the question is, are you capable of doing that? And I really leave that up to you. I believe, if you believe, anything can happen. It's just a matter of how hard and smart you're willing to work at it. So ultimately, you know, the 3X Pitch Velocity program gives you the guide, gives you the light at the end of the tunnel. You just have to basically work your way to the end of the tunnel. So hope this helps.